That's right. I am late, but I am here on this Wednesday, finally getting things started. My name is Stuart Davis. I am a flawed man of God. I am a deacon at a small church just outside of Richmond, Virginia. I'm not a pastor. I'm not a biblical scholar. I haven't been to seminary. I'm not trying to get you to join my church or donate to any special cause. What I'm here to do is talk about God, talk about Jesus, talk about the Holy Spirit, talk about a wide variety of different topics, issues, and current events, and give you my takes on them as they relate to myself, who I consider your average Christian guy. I've been a Christian all my life, 40 years, non-denominational Protestant. Don't subscribe to any particular doctrine or denomination. I'm just in the Word every night, uh, trying to do it better. So tune in as I try to let you know if I've done it right or done it wrong. But either way, you're going to see me on here giving you my best takes and my best effort when I can. So if you're somebody who's interested in learning more about Jesus, Christianity, maybe you've become curious, or something's keeping you up at night. Maybe there's a voice at the back of your mind wondering if there's more to this life than just your existence here on earth. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Hopefully this can be a point of information from you. It's where you can gather some information and perhaps some knowledge, some insight, some influence on what it's like from a lay perspective on being a Christian. Like I said, you're not getting the perspective of somebody who is talking from the pulpit, not somebody who's talking as an expert, or somebody who is kind of in the clergy, so to speak. You're getting it from somebody that you might, very similar to somebody you might meet if you went to church on Sunday. And maybe giving you kind of what we're all about, maybe dispelling some of the rumors or some of the stereotypes that you might have. And that will do on a day in and day out basis. Please just come tune in and see what you can get out of this. Hopefully it allays some of your concerns. Hopefully you can find peace and maybe start a relationship with God, because look, he wants you to believe, he wants you to have faith, he wants you to be someone to be welcomed in to heaven when your time comes, as it will come for all of us. If you are already a Christian and you just enjoy Christian topics and discussions, welcome as well. Glad to have you here. You'll find that we've got a great chat. A couple of them are already here, a bunch of regulars who come in and make this show just that much better. And help add a little bit more than just my voice to things. I'm just the knucklehead who gets on here and puts my face on the channel. Not the best looking face, especially how I'm doing right now, but it does make this a very relaxed, comfortable stream where we can come in and talk about biblical concepts, biblical issues, and get other people's opinions, not just mine. People who are genuinely curious, folks who don't know anything about Christianity or very little, folks who are finding out the first time about the things that we talk about. There are people here who know more about me, about discussions. Some will act as the ombudsman to me, something that I'm always eager to have around me. But either way, come on in and give us your perspective. Tell me where you think I'm wrong, tell me where you think I'm right, and tell me where you think that you have some sort of insight, experience, um, or impressions that differ from mine or reinforce what we're already talking about. Doesn't matter. I just want you to be part of this chat. I know you'll enjoy it. And we are a small enough group that if you tune in, you will definitely get my response. I will likely read what you wrote and respond to it. And with that said, folks, welcome to our first stream back from after Easter. He is risen and he is no longer in the tomb. Christ has defeated death. Christ has absolved us. Christ has taken all of those sins on his shoulders and on his life. Went down, beat that door open like it was doom eternal at the gates of hell, spent a couple of days just really making life hard for all those demons down there. And then it's put more salt in the wound, pull that final victory flag and plant it into the ground. He breaks open that boulder, that rock in front of the tomb, walks out, and continues on. Ultimately, Christ ascends into heaven after the Great Commission. But what we're celebrating tonight, what we're celebrating in this after effect is the resurrection, an actual resurrection, not what we'll hear some of the egalitarian, some of the modernists will say. You don't have to believe in a literal resurrection. No, you do, because otherwise everything's relative. Otherwise, you're just a universalist. You don't believe in God. You just believe you believe in whatever you want to believe. You don't believe in a truth. You just want everybody to be right. You're just afraid that someone's feelings are going to get hurt. So don't at me with any of this. It might have been a figurative resurrection. It might have just been a metaphor for all of us doing better in our lives. Shut up. Shut up with it. I'm not here for that crap. I'm not feeling good enough to deal with it. And as you can see, I'm kind of irritated. So, yes, late tonight. Dresden's in the chat. Neo Rice, welcome. Haven't seen you in a while. Always good to have Mr. Neo in the chat. But I wouldn't have made Noah's Ark. Of course not. I wasn't born yet. I might be old, but I'm not that old. And maybe he's still feeling under the weather. I'm recovering. So, oddly enough, what's going on, Porcupine? Is any background noise coming out on this? I was listening to the ball game. I'm going to hang on a second, guys. All right, I'm back. Sorry. I had the game on. It was loud enough that it was distracting me. Loud enough that it was distracting me, and I didn't know if it was coming in on over the mic. But just to be safe and just for my own sanity, because I'm sure the Reds are going to blow this game, I went ahead and turned it down. Texan Italian is here with a new avatar, and MR is here. Looking forward to seeing you soon, MR. In just over a week. Man. MR, you coming in with the hey? All right, guys, let me tell you about this weekend. So Friday's great. Friday, I thought I did a really good job. You guys tell me. I thought I did a really good job on the Good Friday stream. I felt like I was talking consistently and from the heart on my feelings about Good Friday, and I thought about what was appropriate if we're putting ourselves in the shoes of Peter, and it just felt good. Felt good afterwards. Got a lot off my chest. Went a while, and it was precisely what I was aiming for. Now, how it landed with you guys, don't know. Hopefully, pretty good. I had one guy say it was one of my best streams, which makes me happy. Which does make me happy. I like knowing that, especially on important dates where I'm marking things specifically that I'm making an impact, a positive impact, and that was good. So I do that. I'll get to that in a second. I'll get to that when I'm done with my story. um, so I got done with that. Got a bunch of my new computer components in. Started messing with those. And just got a little tired, after everything. Those long streams where I'm really focusing mentally, especially after working, is they're draining on me. It just makes me more tired. So I was like, sleep. Wake up at 5 a.m. Nature's calling. And like I said, house had been sick this past week. Household had some sickness in. So I'm like, wonder if I'm getting what they're getting. So I go into the bathroom, and then I'm like, oh, I do have what they have. So I was experiencing some nausea, some bowel movements. I'm not going to get any more graphic than that. And couldn't keep, just absolute loss of appetite. No fever, but just no energy either. And so stayed mostly up here watching baseball, and the kids are spending time with me at a distance, and hoping I could recover for Easter, but glad that it didn't strike me on Friday, so I was able to get that stream done. If it had happened a day sooner, it wouldn't have happened. But alas, Sunday, I woke up feeling okay, but also out in a sweat. Like I had I had a fever that had broken. I went to bed. When I went to bed on Saturday, I was feeling just chills, but I'd had chills with no fever already. But really, just feeling a little bit of just really sweaty when I woke up, and had some soup for breakfast. Immediately, stomach went sour. I'm like, can't do it. I don't want to get anybody sick at church just because I want to be there. So we phoned it in. Wife who had been on the mend, it had knocked her down again. And so me and her were both in relatively rough shape, but I was getting better as the day went on. So then Monday hits. New softball bats are in. All right. I'm working, take lunch off and go to the batting cages for lunch. I want to break in these new bats before our game that night. Put about 180 swings together between the two bats, which is a lot. Okay, that's a lot of swings. And I was broke off afterwards. And I was like that, which I expected, right? Usually when I've got several rounds in the batting cages, I'm usually pretty winded. I just couldn't shake it afterwards. Went to my son's soccer practice, still dragging. And so I took myself out of the lineup for the night, and we got our first win. We got our first win. When I wasn't playing, but with the new bats were in order. It was quite the journey. It was quite an interesting night. But we did have a come from behind victory with two really good rallies, and it was fun. But I was not feeling it. And then yesterday, I got up feeling all right. Still about 80%. Got to work. Done. Noon, had to take the rest of the day off. Had to just call it a day and just rest. And then today I've been about 90-95%. And so that's great. Except for these things, right? Make your jokes. I know. I don't care. I'm on the internet right now. Everybody can see them. Gotten these cold sores since I was 8 or 9 years old, and it happens. I'll usually get one after allergies, after some sort of thing. What's going on, Nico? And when COVID hit, I got a couple. This time I've got 3. So treating those. I hate these things. Luckily, I've got a mustache to kind of block it a little bit, but man, it shows up. I'm looking at it on the screen right now. It's it's for real. It really shows up. So, but other than that, feeling all right. This will be the last stream, regular stream at least, on this computer that I'm on right now. This has been the old rig. Serranos and I had a long talk after one of my streams last week while I was sitting around ordering parts, and so I've got the new rig. Hang on. Let me see if I can do this without breaking anything. Got the new one. It lights up in red. Looks kind of like a Templar when it's all set, all up and running. So I'm excited about it. And so I got that all together. Hopefully, start streaming from that on Friday, and then we'll go from there. So I'll start doing the finishing touches on that. What I need to do right now is transfer Windows over on this to my transfer Windows from the traditional disk hard drive to a solid state drive, and then it's going over to my son to be used. New Ethernet cables coming in tomorrow. Set everything up, and then go from there. But yeah, I think that's it. How's everybody doing? How are you guys doing? I know some of you guys have been putting some updates in there, and I'm getting ready to start reading from the chat. So, like I said, Dresden, Neo, Porcupine, good to see you guys. Texan Italian, MR, Emmanuel Osorio. Hello, everyone. MR's looking forward to the meetup next weekend. Me too. Looking forward to seeing some of my buddies as well. Long time since we've all been together. Looking forward to meeting, getting back up with Nick and hanging out with him. It's gonna be a good time. It's gonna be a good time, I'm sure. And again, putting together plans for the Nashville trip too. So if anybody's interested in going to that, definitely hit me up. I'll be excited to meet you guys. And there we go. Emmanuel Osorio, not gonna lie, I didn't want to come in today, but I didn't want to break my promise to you guys or God. But now that I'm here, I'm ready to learn. It's discipline and duty, friends. Yeah. And it's hard to the kind of thing, you're always like, but I want to be here, right? Yeah. But it's like expecting yourself to always be in a good mood, expecting yourself to always get along with somebody, expecting yourself to always be proud of your work. It's not, you're going to have these low days. And I don't mind if you guys miss. I want to see you guys. I enjoy seeing your chats in here. I enjoy, knowing that you guys are all doing well, and glad that you guys get something good out of this. But we don't take attendance here or anything. But if you are committing to something, and you're committing to learning about this and going through these Bible streams, then yes, it will take discipline. But you can always catch this on the replay too. But if it's this one thing, you want to catch it live, you want to be part of the action, and like I said, I will always encourage that. You got the regular guys and the randos who show up every once in a while. Everybody, you're all welcome in here, and I look forward to seeing you. So I'm always happy when y'all are doing that. But discipline is what keeps you into things. A lot of people like being in shape. A lot of people enjoy working out, but some days you just don't feel like it, but you make yourself get up and do it. So I'm glad to see you here, Emmanuel. MR, I don't mind Peter as much, but you made it a great case. Yeah, Peter, like I said, Peter deserves some press because, I mean, Peter is so relatable. And that's what I said. One thing I love about the Old Testament as we go through here, there's so many relatable moments. Not necessarily that we can put ourselves in the shoes of everybody in the Old Testament. Like, hopefully you're not putting yourself in the shoes of Jezebel or Ahab. But things are happening in the Old Testament that we're like, man, I've been in a situation kind of similar to this. And, or man, I understand why so much was going on. I understand so much more about what I understand about the New Testament. I understand about why there's so much emotion in the Old Testament versus what we think is just God creates the earth, God kicks Adam and Eve out, God floods the planet, and then he makes a bunch of rules, throws a bunch of plagues together, and then visits justice regularly on the Israelites for minor offenses. It's not, right? And it doesn't just happen like that. There's a lot of cause and effect. And it's a lot of God saying, please don't do this because I've set things up this way. If you do this, there will be consequences. Us ignoring the consequences and then experiencing said consequences. So, Peter, to me, he's mentioned a lot in the Bible, but he doesn't get as much play as Paul because Paul's writing, so many letters in there. Peter is such a guy that so many, I feel like, men will look at it and be like, yeah, I've had guys I've looked up to, older brothers or, more experienced coworkers or, people, older kids in the neighborhood, an older cousin, something like that I've looked up to and been a disappointment, not lived up to things, stuff like that. Or, when you're in the position where Christ is being betrayed in the moment with all the emotion, wanting to do whatever you could to stop it, not wanting to hear about the death of your Messiah, and then living with the consequences of realizing that you're not as great as you thought you were, not as great as you told everybody you were, feeling like you've broken faith with the most important thing in your life, and then being forgiven of that. What happens with Peter is a small microcosm of what Jesus does for all of us, but it's on a very personal level. And what you see with Peter, you can see in yourself. And there's some arguments to be had with the papists over there that my brothers in Catholic faith. I got in an argument today, small argument on Twitter because I'm back on there and already doing what I said I didn't want to do. The folk comes over there and says, you Protestants are this because X. And he's using his experience as a Reformed Baptist, a very specific, very narrow culture in Christianity, in what is the broader Protestant group. and that he says he's leaning on it. I don't know how well he's leaning on it, but whatever. He's a Catholic now, and so he was poo-pooing on the Protestants, and it was kind of like, just because you have an experience as a Reformed Baptist doesn't mean you understand what is going on with all of the denominations. I'm non-denominational. I pay attention, and I try very hard to couch when I have opinions on things. This is just what I'm seeing, and this is what concerns me. I like to bring on people from other denominations for them to explain their faith and what it is about Anglicanism, Lutheranism, baptism, stuff like that, and let them respond to their or answer for their denominations more so than I have, because I have no business doing that. I can just say, this is what I think the scripture is saying. This is what I think is right. And being open enough to understand that perhaps I've let my own interpretation lead me in a bad direction, and being willing to correct myself if corrected by God. So there you go. Emmanuel said Friday stream was really good. Learned a lot. Glad you did. 5 of us, no likes. Come on, everybody, get them up. Hey, like and subscribe, guys. I'm always up for that. MR said, today I learned you need to break in bats. Is that why I sucked in Little League? I don't know about the lower class, the smaller bats or the lower quality bats, and I don't know about how they were back then. But the traditional wisdom with bats is that you need to swing once you get them out the wrapper. You need to make some contact, get that bat kind of used to. We don't have one right now. It's down in the car trunk right now. But we had bought a couple of very nice 2-piece softball bats, and they felt so smooth. The ball striking them, it just smelled. It was very smooth, very soft. Not any feedback down the handle or anything. Just whap. And we had some good contact off of it. Our first game, we were just hitting them straight to all the fielders, and that was the big problem why we weren't scoring any runs, getting any base runners. Everything was just going straight to the position. It's just the way it breaks sometimes. But once they started getting in between and finding the gaps, whoo, man, it was on. So, yeah, Nico, I'm recovered. Glad to be back. Middle of the week, and I'm really sad about this because we're not streaming tomorrow. I've got my normal elder deacon meeting, dinner, and I won't miss those things for the world because it's awesome. Sorry, guys. It's a little bit of time with the church family, making sure that the church family is staying in communion with each other, in communion as in communication. MR, about my lips. Usually I make a joke, but I actually like you. I don't care about the jokes. I'd rather people I like make them than people I dislike. Emmanuel, wait, you need to break in a bat. I thought you just take your swing. I mean, you do. That's how you break it in. Now you seem fine. Yeah. I wish. The Silicon Valley, right? Silicon Valley SSD drive on the old computer. Emmanuel, good week. Now that I have my CDL, I've been helping my little brother get his. I'm sorry. Now I understand what you wrote. Good week. Now that I have my CDL, I've been helping my little brother get his family business and whatnot. Oh yeah, help your brother out, man. Always working to lift other folks up, especially folks are going to take advantage of the opportunities that you help them with. It's the best thing we can do, especially for family. Porcupine, off work all week, working on the bus, installation complete, time to install ceiling, plumbing, etc. The plumbing thing to me is probably got to be the most complicated part of all this stuff. Because the ceiling, you got the arc there. The insulation, it's not how thick is the insulation, I guess is my question. But the plumbing, it's not something that trucks are really designed for. Also, how you've got to upgrade the springs on that, I'm sure. The leaf, I'm assuming are you sticking with leaf springs? Are you going to coilovers or some sort of hydraulic system? I'm interested on that too. Mr says, sorry, been slacking with attendance this week. Mom broke her shoulder. Prayers to your mom. My dad's knee went out, so we're still trying to find out how bad that is. He's okay right now, but the dogs are on the loose. It's kind of there's kind of a lot going on down there on the farm. Neo, any luck on getting Rumble going? Not yet. Like I said, this weekend I might talk to Nick a little bit about it. Maybe. We'll see. I'm gonna look more into it, but again, I haven't been feeling well, so I've been doing this computer transfer. The room is a wreck because of that. Because it started off all nice and neat, and then I started not feeling well and half-assing some of this stuff. So it's just turned into a mess. And so I'm just trying to right the ship right now. Neo Rice, oof. Emmanuel said, it's more for myself because I want to learn more on interactions and examples when there are more people with experience to learn from, as well as getting closer to God bit by bit. Amen. Same way. I'm the same way. So, what I try to do is always look to see somebody who might have a better bead or a better attitude on things. Like I said, I've talked about this guy, and a gentleman of mine who I'm friends with. My kids are friends with each other. They play soccer together. He's a joy to be around, but we did not get along at first in our first interactions. And then we both had gone our separate ways and gone through different life experiences, came back. And he is one of the most impressive people when it comes to being a humble person with their faith and trying to be better and looking through Jesus's actions and Christ's actions in a way to kind of temper himself. And the change has been remarkable. And he's a person I have a deep amount of respect for. And the folks that I will be meeting with tomorrow night, all folks that I deeply respect. Most are older than me. One is younger than me, but they all have things that I respect about them and look up to them in certain ways. And I try to glean as much of that as possible and put that into my own practice and be a better person. Figs is in the chat. What's going on, Figs? I'm winning so far in fantasy. Trailing so far in right now. Trailing so far in the hockey playoffs. The last week of hockey right now. It's not looking all that great. So did I screw Peter and Paul up? Might be. You'll find out when we come back to covering them. Said Peter and Paul are the same side of the coin. There's a man willing to charge in faith hand, but two different approaches. And they come from very different backgrounds. Peter is a very simple man who is picked up by Jesus as a disciple and learns at his feet and grows in that way. Peter is a man who is well educated, a Roman citizen, as well as Jewish. They both commit deep crimes. If you want to consider, if you consider what Peter does, very egregious with denying Christ, he's forgiven. Paul is one of the Pharisees actively persecuting / murdering Christians. He's the chosen one, right? He's young, he is smart, he's sharp, he is zealous in his faith that he is doing the right thing. And all of a sudden, Jesus intercedes and punishes him, lightly considering what his actions were, but all through that to show him that he has a higher calling. He has a better calling, and to bring him to God's truth. And what happens is what was an early great nemesis of early Christians becomes one of the most influential people in the movement. He writes much of the New Testament and is heavily involved with the new churches, with the spreading of churches. And he and Peter both end up sharing execution under Nero. Nemar said, I have a few homers in ninth grade. First time, none in the Little League, and those were ones I didn't feel hit the ball. It makes sense. Yeah, comes right off. Mr. Branscombe, well, how's it going? Good to see you here, sir. It's going to be a light stream. Light stream tonight. We're just doing kind of some catch up because it's been quite a while. We're going to go over one chapter of the Bible and then call it even, and then we'll probably have a business side of things for Friday since and close out Chronicles, First Chronicles, with that. Getting close to the end of all these. Alex Morris here. Eric, roll on. How is it going, my man? Daily. A daily dying to self is what is required. You are in good company, brother. He says, damn, stops. Peter spoilers. Hey, the book's been out for a while, Nico. You'll get to it. Porcupine said, just making sure it's balanced, not all the weight on the driver or the passenger side. Yeah. Neo said, I'll catch the Raven play, but I got to go to bed. It was good seeing y'all. Hope your mom's shoulder quakes better. Heals quickly, MR. All right. Well, with that said, all right, let's get into our one chapter tonight. This will be a relatively short stream. Finally, Chronicles is going to end. No. First Chronicles is going to end. Second Chronicles is going to be in. I think Second Chronicles, what we're going to find is less of the genealogy. And it's going to move into more of what goes on with Judah. But who knows? We'll see. It's going to be, but this is more of an accounting of things. We're gonna breeze through this and then call it a night. But just to kind of rehash what we've been doing with this, is a lot of this has been talking about David. Almost all of Chronicles has been about David. Genealogy, a little bit about Saul, and a lot about David. And what we see here is less what we get in Samuel, which is a lot of the exploits of David, the Ute, the less of his, zealous charges in the battle, his friendship with Jonathan, his struggles with Saul, his time in exile. All that stuff's covered before. This is more in line with understanding David the king and kind of seeing what the bureaucracy was and exactly the breadth of how big his kingdom was and what he was dealing with. And not only that, but what we catch here in Chronicles is the understanding that when Solomon builds the temple to God, builds the temple for the ark, for all the stuff, so that there's no more tent, that this was the brainchild of King David, because he felt that the ark deserved, as the seat, the physical seat of power that God chose to present in, deserved more splendor, better shelter, more honor than the house that David lived in, the palace, whatever you wanted to call it, that he had at the time. And God, who seems flattered, but at the same time going, I don't need that. I haven't asked for it. But we'll build one. We'll build one. You won't build it. And David takes that in stride, because the good news is like, you're not going to build this, but your son will. That's good, because trust me, guys, what we've seen a lot of in this, even before we found out about what happens after David, what we've seen in a lot of these Old Testament books is that you'll have a great judge, or you'll have a great priest, or you'll have a Jacob, and some of their sons are rotten. And David's no different here. He does have some rotten sons, but he's got at least one good one, and that's Solomon. Solomon's his chosen one, right? And so at least he knows he's going to get one good son to not just carry on the kingdom, but lead it well and do something great. And what does any father want to do? Much like God does, he wants to set him up for success. So he's going to start stockpiling his own resources for the kingdom, so it's less work that his son has to do. But not only is David setting Solomon up for success, but God is, because God's the one who's told David this. And while David can put away resources, God can do something much more important, and that's give Solomon the peace and the lack of distractions necessary to focus on the task at hand. Because if any of you guys remember or have been in a position where you've been in a position of leadership, or you've been given a project that needs your focus, doing something, you've got something, the less distractions that you have, things that are pulling against your attention, pulling your focus away, the harder it is to get that task done. What we're talking about is a man who is going to have the project of building the temple for the ark, the temple for God, the temple, the ultimate temple on earth, right? In a physical manifestation, built in a way that man can best express his honor for God. Falls short, we all understand that, but given the best effort, getting an A for effort and a pretty good execution, what we see in the end. But this is a monumental undertaking. Takes years to do. And the resources that we see laid out here are incredible. And what David sets aside is nowhere near enough. But God grants Solomon, because of Solomon's own personality, God grants Solomon great wisdom to lead his people and keeps enemies away. And so that the management, the leading of a very difficult group of Israelites. We know how difficult the Israelites are to rule over in a righteous way. He takes that and makes it easy enough to get done what's necessary, get done what is needed to get done. And Mr. Branscombe coming in here. Nobody earned the kingdom by God like David did. He was a man after God's own heart. He never turned from the left or the right following God, save the Uriah situation. Yeah, the Uriah. I mean, it is. But even that, right? And this is something I've talked about before. In that we learn, I think it's something that men can get a lot out of. We can learn how difficult lust and matters related to that can can infect and get to even the best of us, right? We see it with him, which is it really gets David. But we see Abraham lose lose the plot a little bit with with Hagar and Ishmael. As a result, there are complications because of that, because he listened to Sarah instead of just having faith in God that he would have a an heir in God's time. He listened to Sarah, started that whole mess, and we are still seeing the complications behind that today. We see Jacob and the brokenness of that family that results out of that, out of multiple things, but a rivalry between sisters and an inability to kind of keep things under control there. With David, it's heavy. David does a couple of things really wrong with the practical execution of Uriah, and the underhandedness behind it. But God takes even that, and this is why so much of David is so worth studying. God takes even David's worst misstep and creates something amazing out of that. Between the union of the that once it becomes legitimate union of David and Bathsheba, once she becomes his wife, the child between those two is Solomon. And Solomon is the next step. And Solomon is not quite the man that David is, but Solomon is great in his own right. And while he'll make his own mistakes, and one of those is bore out of tolerance for something that God has no tolerance for, there is so much wisdom expressed by Solomon that his existence, his life, is a treasure for all of us. And Eric up here following up, if God can justify David, he can justify any of us. The same thing with, and if you want to look at the New Testament version of that, if God can justify Paul, he can justify any of us. And these are some of the greatest of men, the greatest of folks in our faith, in our historical faith, who have misstepped in egregious ways. But they're still held in high honor, not because of their own deeds, but because of what God was able to do through them, and in spite of their mistakes. And I think that's difficult. And when and what Peter says here, he paid a heavy price physically and spiritually. Yeah, he loses the son that ends up being born out of the adulterous union that he has with Bathsheba. He knows that he has injured the Lord, and he knows he has broken faith with that. And this is coming from a man who would charge into battle just saying, God's got my back, in a time when that God wanted us to do precisely that. Doing exactly what God had commanded the Israelites to do back then. Fight the Philistines, fight the Canaanites, get these guys. He wanted them out. They were being kicked out for a reason. So Chronicles is taken a step away from a lot of the in the army, we call it the citations, right? If you get a bronze star or a silver star or a medal of honor or your distinguished flying cross or your meritorious service, your Navy cross, these things, there's always a citation. What did you do to earn it? And on If guys, you guys, and maybe I'll do this on one of the off-topic streams. Reading Medal of Honor citations are insane. But that's basically what we're getting in a lot of what is happening in Samuel is the citation of David's greatness. And what we're hearing on the back here and more in Chronicles is more about what went on the business side of King David. So, Emmanuel, David was just a few steps away from swiggity swoogity. I'm coming for that booty. Oh, he wasn't just a few steps away from it. He did it. But it's a lot of what we guys face with temptation every day. We do. And while, and again, I can't speak as much from what the women deal with on their sides of temptation and everything, but the Bible does illustrate to us men very clearly that lust, the temptation of the flesh, is a very real thing, and that it's very serious. It has very serious consequences, but at the same time, there is still grace through that, and we can still understand and not kill ourselves over the fact that we do understand that it has brought down the best that we have to offer. There you go. No, it didn't bring down Joseph. Joseph with the big peek on thought moment out there. Just Joseph's moment was great. And I don't think Daniel has to worry about it either. Those are the guys I'm thinking about off the top of my head. However, it brought down David, and it caused a lot of complications for Jacob and Abraham alike. And I know if I go back more, I can find other examples of it. Samson. Samson. Emmanuel, everyone loves the action of fighting and destruction, but people tend to forget the bureaucracy of who was writing the reports. And that's one of the things that's very important to the Hebrews, the Israelites, the Jewish people, however, whatever you want to moniker them with at this point in the Bible. But culturally, they keep these notes, and it is important in that aspect. Figs, lust for women has caused wars. All right, well, with that said, let's get into tonight's reading. Let me share the screen. I'm only doing it on one screen tonight, says, like I said, I'm in process of switching over computers. So the new one's up and running, data's getting transferred, that kind of stuff. I think Samson's biggest problem was hubris. Samson's biggest problem was hubris. There you go. All right. 1 Chronicles 27, army divisions. This is the list of the Israelites, heads of families, commanders of thousands, and commanders of hundreds, and their officers, who served the king and all that concerned the army divisions that were on duty month by month throughout the year. Each division consisted of 24,000 men, no small amount of people. We'll put this into today's numbers. Military. Use army. Use this army division since it's the. I don't know the number off the top of my head. A division is a large military unit of formation, usually consisting of between 6,000 and 25,000 soldiers. A division is composed of several regiments or brigades. In turn, several divisions typically make up a corps. And let's put the how many people, how many troops? This military 2023. We are struggling to keep up numbers now. U.S. military size in 2019 was 1,388,000 people. All right. That is in our country with a huge military with a great big population. All right, just keep that in mind. That's how many was in the Army. Each division consisted of 24,000 men. In charge of the first division for the first month was Jashobeam, son of Zabdiel. There were 24,000 men in his division. He was a descendant of Perez and chief of all the army officers for the first month. Emmanuel, you'll know who Perez is after our long discussion about Judah. In charge of the division for the second month was Dodai, the Ahoite. Mikloth was the leader of his division. There were 24,000 men in his division. The third army commander for the third month was Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, the priest. He was chief, and there were 24,000 men in his division. This was Benaiah, who was a mighty warrior among the 30 and was over the 30. His son Amizabad was in charge of his division. The fourth, for the fourth month, was Asahel, the brother of Joab. His son Zebediah was his successor. There were 24,000 men in his division. The fifth, for the fifth month, was the commander Shamhuth, the Izarite. There were 24,000 men in his division. The sixth, for the sixth month, was Ira, the son of Ikesh, the Tekorite. There were 24,000 men in his division. The seventh, for the seventh month, was Helez, the Pelonite, an Ephraimite. There were 24,000 men in his division. Picking up on a theme here. The eighth, for the eighth month, was Sibbecai, the Hushathite, a Zerahite. Wait, he's a Hushathite and a Zerahite? Whatever. There were 24,000 men in his division. The ninth, for the ninth month, was Abiezer, the Anatholite, a Benjamite. There were 24,000 men in his division. The 10th, for the 10th month, was Maharai, the Netophathite, the Netophathite, a Zerahite. There were 24,000 men in his division. The 11th, for the 11th month, was Benaiah, the Pirathonite, an Ephraimite. There were 24,000 men in his division. The 12th, for the 12th month, was Heldai, the Netophathite, from the family of Othniel. There were 24,000 men in his division. So if we do the simple math here, right? 12 times 24,000, 288,000 in this small area. And as we know from earlier readings, the actual, fighting capacity of Israel is much greater than this. 288,000 for the small bit of country that is the size of Rhode Island, maybe? Whereas through the entire United States, it's 1.3 million. It's a lot more fighting men per capita. Leaders of the tribes. The leaders of the tribes of Israel. Over the Reubenites, Eleazar, son of Zikri. Over the Simeonites, Shephatiah, son of Makkah. Over Levi, Hashabiah, son of Kemuel. Over Aaron, Zadok. Over Judah, Elihu, a brother of David. Over Issachar, Omri, son of Michael. Over Zebulun, Ishmaiah, son of Obadiah. Over Naphtali, Jeremoth, son of Azriel. Over the Ephraimites, Hoshea, son of Azaziah. Over half the tribe of Manasseh, Joel, son of Pedaiah. Over the half tribe of Manasseh in Gilead, Edo, son of Zechariah. Over Benjamin, Jasiel, son of Abner. Over Dan, Azarel, son of Jeroham. These were the leaders of the tribes of Israel. David did not take the number of men 22 years old or less because the Lord had promised to make Israel as numerous as the stars in the sky. Joab, son of Zeruiah, began to count the men but did not finish. God's wrath came on Israel on accounting of this numbering, and the number was not entered into the book. Oh, yeah, that's the other one. I knew I was missing one, Peter. I knew I was missing one. He said the Uriah situation. There was also the census. Also the census. I knew it was two big ones. And the number was not entered in the book of the annals of the king of King David. The king's overseers, Asmaveth, son of Adiel, was in charge of the royal storehouses. So your quartermasters. Jonathan, son of Uzziah, was in charge of the storehouses in the outlying districts, in the towns, the villages, and the watchtowers. Ezri, son of Caleb, was in charge of the workers who farmed the land, agriculture. Shimei, the Ramathite, was in charge of the vineyards, also agriculture. Zabdi, the Shifmite, was in charge of the produce of the vineyards for the wine vats, production. Baal Hanan, the Gederite, was in charge of the olive and sycamore fig trees in the western foothills. More ag. It's going to be a lot of ag. Joash was in charge of the supplies of olive oil. Shitrai, the Sharonite, was in charge of the herds grazing in Sharon, some livestock. Shaphat, son of Adlai, was in charge of the herds in the valleys. Obil, the Ishmaelite, was in charge of the camels. Bit stereotypical right there. Jediah, the Marathon. There were Mirononite. There were Mironothite was in charge of the donkeys. Jaziz, the Hagrite, was in charge of the flocks. All these were the officials in charge of King David's property. Just King David's property. Jonathan, David's uncle, was a counselor, a man of insight and a scribe. Jehiel, son of Hakmoni, took care of the king's sons. Ahithophel was the king's counselor. Hushai, the Archite, was the king's confidant. Ahithophel was succeeded by Jehoiada of Benaiah and by Abiathar. Joab was the commander of the royal army. If only Joab had had less influence than he did and taken less actions, but, God's will be done. And there we go with chapter 27. Nico says, I wonder what is the army as a percentage of the total population back then. I have a feeling most men over 22 will be in the army because there ain't a lot of job in fields back then. I mean, there's a lot to do. Remember, things aren't automated back over at this point. There's a lot more labor involved in making sure things are getting done. However, at the same time, you need to be more ready to fight because the enemies are all around you. And they don't enjoy, well, they do during Solomon, but most of the time they are not enjoying peaceful times because they're busy with the work of conquering and fighting back attacks from those heathen Canaanites and Philistines. And there you have it. So, we'll talk about it maybe a little bit more on Friday. There was a article that went out by Megan Basham talking about what's going on with the Southern Baptist Convention in regards to Rick Warren, in regards to egalitarianism, ordination of women in the Southern Baptist Convention, the tolerance of that, and the tolerance of LGBTQ affirmations, which is a big deal, and why it's being mishandled so much, why it's important that the SBC leadership seems to be mishandling it so much. They cannot seem to just come out and give a clear answer on something. And part of that, I think, is because they're worried about numbers, worried about finances. I don't know. Worried about influence. Not sure. I'm not in their heads. But what is concerning is the lack of commitment to being clear and concise instead of hand-wringing and politicking and jockeying for position instead of just understanding that Scripture is very clear on what's being discussed. Emmanuel says, interesting. I don't know what is happening outside of big churches. Again, I say burn the heretics if they don't want to right themselves, but by God's grace, I'm learning. What we are seeing, what we are called to do now is, or what we see with what Christ does for us, and so we understand that it is not too any person who is living and breathing, it is not too late to turn to God. It's not too late. So what is imperative of us is to live the lives that we are called to live by Christ. Try to our best to walk his path and understand that while people might be wrong today, and maybe they'll be wrong for the rest of their lives, we never know when they might decide what they've been doing has been wrong. They might have a moment, maybe not on the road to Damascus like Paul did, but they might have that epiphany moment where they realize they hit rock bottom or something and they realize, I need to get right with God. It happens all the time. If you're a member of a church, you know what I'm talking about. You've got a member there somewhere who didn't believe or who had walked away from the faith and came back because something was wrong, or just out of the blue one moment they had a crisis, something, and they came back. That can happen at any time, and we need to be ready for them, and we need to be planting the seeds whenever we can, even when they're, you know, in their blue-haired phase, waving weird flags at us, yelling all sorts of epithets and curses at us, talking about how we hate them, or that, you know, we're backwards, we're on the wrong side of history, whatever. We're closeted sinners. All these things that they're yelling at us. You know what you're about. And you need to make sure that they know what the faith is about. And they can listen to it or they can't, or they won't. They'll either hear you or they won't. But put it out there, right? And keep doing right by you. We're not in the do not suffer the witch to live phase of Christianity. Besides, most of those folks are just obsessed about essential oils and whatnot. But going back to what you're saying, interesting. I don't know what is happening outside of big churches. This actually has one very big church in the center of it, or very big group of churches. Southern Baptist Convention is a loose organization, but it is a very large uh, loose organization of churches. But they range from the very small, which is one of the subjects of this church of the article Megan wrote. She did a great job with it, by the way. Definitely gave me a lot more insight on what was going on. But she did a great job writing the article from the perspective of a small church, seeing that some things look wrong, bringing it up, but because another church, a very large church, by the well-known well-known pastor who thinks so much of himself, Rick Warren of Saddleback Church, Purpose-Driven Life Ministries, who claims that he is the most important person in Christianity today, um, by his attitude, because his church and his theology and his egalitarianism has his church, his very large churches, um, in contradiction with what the SBC bylaws or regulations, whatever their governing rules say. Um, they're they're not in they're not compatible with that. And so when somebody asks for clarification on rules and it calls into question something else, dang. Um, all of a sudden leadership is getting nervous. There's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of influence involved. There's a lot of popularity contests going on. But what a lot of people, what I'm sick and tired of is these popularity contests with the church's obsession with money, with numbers, with this, that, and the other. We should be obsessed with numbers of we want to get numbers, but we want good numbers. We want people coming in because they want to learn and they want to change and they want to better themselves. We don't want people sitting in the seats because they feel bad and they want to be told better, told what they're doing that is wrong is okay. It's not. And you hear this a lot recently. I've seen it a lot recently. Pastors unwilling to preach about hell, heaven, judgment, and these things. And they're so quick to talk about how we need to be a better church, how we need to not be so legalistic, how we need to be more tolerant. The trap there, and maybe they realize, maybe those pastors realize it, or maybe they don't. But what they're doing is not instilling the discipline or the fundamentals. And they're not doing their jobs as pastors. We don't want itching ears and tinglings. Yeah. Just one chapter, Blaine. Welcome, by the way. I'll be tuning in on your show later. But we just did one chapter of Chronicles, but we've basically just been catching up on that. And I was just talking about the Southern Baptists. This is something I've talked about Rick Warren in a previous stream about a year ago, I want to say, a little bit, not quite a year ago. It was sometime in 2022. Talked about Rick Warren a bit, and I've talked about the SBC having some problems. This is big for them, and we need to keep them in our prayers. We need to keep them in our prayers because there are good people, there are good churches, there's a lot of good. There's a lot of good in the SBC. There's a lot of bad. There's a lot of things that they're struggling with as well. Part of it's bad press that's deserved. Some of it's not deserved. But we just need to pray for them that they make the right decisions and that they can overcome this issue that so many of us are that so many churches are dealing with. So many churches are dealing with. And Emmanuel, you say a prosperity gospel is easy to preach, but the discipline of saying that, hey, there's a hell and old school pastors that used to be quite fire and brimstone because he warned the flock. This isn't prosperity gospel, but it's kind of hand in hand, because in prosperity gospel, there's a carrot and a stick, right? There's supposed to be a guarantee of tangible value, earthly value to prosperity gospel. So this is more in line with the egalitarian movement, the liberalism of the church, the affirmation of the church, the compromise on rules, the ignoring the fact that Jesus says, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. Because culture has shifted, and we have pastors who are either afraid to move to take a stand against the culture, or are actively in line with the culture. They want to see the changes, or they feel like they can straddle the both sides. But the boat's pulling away from the pier, right? And if you got one foot in the boat and one foot on the pier, eventually you got to pick a side, or you going in the drink. And that's the problem that we have. But a lot of different factors at play. A lot of them are insipid. But one of the things we've known, and one of the things that you'll hear me talk about a lot on this show, is how egalitarianism is a cancer that has been hurting Protestants and Catholics alike. Not so much in the orthodoxy. Not so much in the Orthodoxy. They haven't been seeing it. They've still got to worry about modernists as well, but it's really been taking root within Protestant denominations, Protestant churches, and the Catholic Church. Catholics have been fighting it off in some ways better, but in some ways worse. But it's insipid. It tries to sneak in there. Satan is not always overt. In fact, how did he get through in the Garden of Eden? By telling everybody it was okay. Just do it this way. How did we get the Israelites sinning the way they did? Oh, it's okay to do this. Let's compromise on this. One thing leads to another thing, leads to another thing. And when you compromise on your principles, one place, it's slippery slope fallacy. It's not a fallacy if it actually happens. And that's where we find it. Women pastors was a complete novelty, not a good novelty, complete novelty when the Methodists would do it every once in a while. Every once in a while in the 1800s. 1800s, 1,800 years since the foundations of the church being laid in the New Testament. But it didn't kick into high gear until the 1970s in the feminist movement. And what have we seen since then? Now they're like, oh, the Bible doesn't address homosexuality. It absolutely does several times. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry that folks don't want to hear that. I'm sorry that folks don't want to be presented with the idea that Christianity is not compatible with that sin. But Christianity is not compatible with any sin. It's not compatible with your alcoholism. It's not compatible with your adultery. It's not compatible with your lust. It's not compatible with your greed. It's not compatible with homosexuality. It's not compatible with your apostasy. It's not compatible with any of the things that God has talked about and told it and commanded us to avoid. It's not compatible with pedophilia. It's not compatible with bestiality. If you want to, it's not compatible with abortion. It's not compatible with any of those things. All those things are the reason Christ's on that cross. Those things are the reason that we have an Easter, that we have a Good Friday. That's what they're there because of. We're supposed to work away from those things, take us off, not sit in a pulpit, listen to a preacher talk about how great it is or how it's okay, even if it's not. It's not okay to sin. But we do. We need to move past it. So if you're fine with your sin, if you're not ready to admit that what you're doing is wrong, then church membership is not where you're at. Keep sitting in church politely. Keep sitting in church politely, gleaning that. Keep getting that information. Like I said, we had a lesbian couple in our congregation. Not members. They weren't members, but they came to our church. And they sat 3 rows from the front. And they were nice people. I enjoyed them being there. I wanted them to get what was true out of that. But when they wanted to participate in church in the praise team, our music minister said no. No. And it wasn't because he didn't pick one thing. We had another guy told he couldn't because he was living with his fiance and they hadn't been married yet. I hear you. I see you, Emmanuel. I see you down there. But and they left because of that. So why were you there? Were you there because why were you there? Did you think that something different was going to happen? I want to preach the gospel to sinners. I want to preach the gospel. I'm not a preacher. But, I want the message. I want the gospel. I want the news spread to people who don't know it, who haven't decided to accept it yet, to all of these things. I want them there. Want that to be okay. If you're going to be polite, if you're going to respectfully listen and earnestly seek it out. None of us should expect perfection out of that. But what we should expect is the willingness to admit that we're in a position where we're doing something that's wrong. Me too, MR. Me and my wife, we lived together for a while before we get married. I was, again, we've all been there. I'm not going to throw stones and saying these people are damned. I'm saying that sin is going to cause you big issues with God on judgment if you don't do something about it. And that's the thing. I want to see the work. I want to see the work, not in the Catholic sense that I need to see work. I want to see you putting the work in to better yourself. The way I do it, the way people better than me do it. It just it's hard because and I get that some people are afraid because when you make the stand, they want to make a big fuss about it. They want to run to social media. They want to call people out. They want to call people intolerant. But this isn't new. This has been in scripture for years. But this is what is pretended to be. Pretend that this is just made up in order to oppress people. It's not. And if you earnestly go, like we're doing, going through the Bible you understand. When you start to apply God's law into life, you understand why it fits together. Because the person who created, or the being that created the universe, and all the laws that go into it, and who gave us the rules, this is how it's supposed to work. When you do things that way, you see why it fits in and you have an easier time of it. Not to say that life's going to be easy for you or that things are just going to fall into place, but it's going to be easier for you than if you do it the other way. There will be more peace about it. And those of you who I know who are honestly struggling, because I do it too, who are honestly struggling with the sin, and you do it again, and maybe it feels good. Maybe it feels good. Does it feel good afterwards? Or do you feel bad about it? Is there a bit of guilt down there? Nico, because I'm gonna jump ahead because I got to go through these other chats and then we'll close up. But I wanted to go through this one because it jumps out there. Because but we are all sinners. So what is the list of sins that excludes you from joining, or is it something else like attitude? This is a question that different people have different answers to, but this is my take on it. I'm not going to keep you from showing up to church. Right? Again, are you going to be respectful? Are you going to be earnest? Sit and sit and not be disruptive? Then come to church. I want you to be there. And maybe you walk out 100 times thinking this is all BS. They don't know what they're talking about. Maybe that last time. Maybe it just takes one time for it all to make sense for you to get you on that right path. But as far as membership, you have to, at least to me, that's the becoming a member is to a church. Again, it's varies from church to church, from denomination to denomination, and with the non-denoms from church to church. There's a lot more to it than this. There's like a whole process for it. But knowing something's a sin and ignoring it, or being or continuing to be intellectually dishonest and willfully ignorant about your sin because you don't want it to be, that's not going to cut it. That's not going to let me say no, you're not teaching our kids. You're not openly, defiantly expressing a sinful life that we can all see, and teaching our kids, teaching our Sunday school, singing on praise team, maybe even playing on my softball team. You're not going to do those things because that's not a good representation of Christ. Because when you're in those roles, people are looking up to you. People are looking to you as someone with a measure of authority. And I don't want you having membership permissions, because that means you're voting on things. And if you're voting on things, maybe you start wielding other issues. Maybe you start wielding power over decisions that you shouldn't be deciding because of your open defiance. And again, that's not limited to homosexuality. That's to a great many commandments. But it is there's a deeper discussion to answer this question than what I can get into tonight. And I need to, and again, I can only speak for the membership at my church because I'm non-denominational, independent church. And I can only see about what speaks right to me. Right? We've all got stuff going on. So, but I thought that's a good question, Nico. And it's a question that has tripped up a lot of churches along the way. And this is why I think we have a lot of the cultural problem within the church. We got a lot of rot in the church. We've got a lot of sin in the church. And it's being looked over because we don't want to hurt feelings, and we need butts and seats, and we need money in the in tithing. And we want to be viewed as the good guys by a society that doesn't have the same moral compass that Christians should have anymore. Thanks, Nico. I'm glad I could be of assistance there. All right, let me go back up here. Emmanuel says, so like the upbringing of Ruth and all those so-called feminist Christians that a lot of women want to follow, or the globalists in churches. Yeah. Let's say it, the ELCA types. It's not limited to them, but, Episcopalians, Unitarians, Church of Christ's, LMC, or not LMC, ELCA, Lutherans, they're out there in their rainbow colors talking about, and another one that's been in there. They had that gentleman, that state official who was apparently censored or kicked out of office or something like that because he was disrupting a Senate meeting or whatever. He was in church praying to Mother God and comparing, just making very heretical comparisons. They're out there. It's and like I said, it's not just the LGBTQ thing going on. We're not of this world in that sense. We can try what we can to affect culture, to affect change, outlooks and attitudes and everything all we can. But ultimately, we know we're responsible for us and ours being in line with God. As for me and my family, we follow the Lord. Eric says spiritual warfare is a must for all of us. Hit your knees at least twice a day and go to war in the heavenlies. Christians also have to be brave enough to speak up against apostasy. Blake says, "Oh, I was going to say the woman." Well, that too. But again, Adam made that choice. And what did Adam do? She told me to do it. Get out of here, Adam. Stop it. MR. Slippery slope can be used when analyzing the past. It isn't a fallacy. Yeah, get him, Stu. We are not. We are the church, not practicing in sin. Peter Branscombe. When something happens in a pattern over and over again, it cannot be called a fallacy. Manual. There's such thing as lesbians. They don't exist, he says. MR. I lived with my girlfriend for years. Dang. Lived with my wife for about a year before we got married. And we didn't wait for marriage, and neither of us were virgins when we met each other. It happens, MR. But what do you do about it when you realize you're doing something wrong that you shouldn't be? And Peter, right here, all fallen short many times, day in and day out. Blaine says you want to see the fruits. Emmanuel, we all have sin, but the thing is, we must strive to not practicing the sins we're stuck in, as well as to ask God to deliver us from the sin we can't seem to shake off. That's why Jesus was on that cross. Yep. And without God, we can't do it. God shows us the way. God gives us the strength. God is the faith we need. Faith in God is not just believing that he exists. It's the buy-in of the things that he's told us to do, and understanding that it's right and that it's good and wanting to be a part of it. Satan knows that God exists too. Do you think he's saved? Sometimes you just got to say, yes, we are intolerant to the sin that is in us and around us, and ask God and ask for faith and God to guide us. Manuel says it's like the black church and the Hispanic churches. They want to appeal to those single moms because pastors, you say, are forgiven, but there are no consequences of your actions. That's not true. That's not a blank. That's not true. All the way. They've got a split between. Well, I don't know much about the Hispanic churches because I just don't have as much experience with them. But you have traditional. You have churches that are traditional in their faith, and churches that are not, among the black community, among other minority communities, just like white people, just like white churches. Some of the biggest offenders I see are the white churches. They do some of the worst things. But hey, that doesn't mean sin is not a does not limit itself to people's race. It certainly does not, because I can show you two ridiculously stupid things from the Easter services this weekend from folks of various creeds and colors. I thought the first sin Adam committed was to listen to his woman. It was to not obey, or to disobey. The willful act to disobey. Yeah, and I'm sure you are. And I know churches that I grew up around and that I live around that are like that too. But again, I don't want to. I mean, there's guys like Vadi Bacham out there that do a lot of good work. The churches that are leading the charge and getting out of the Methodist nonsense that is the United Methodist Church are the African and Asian Methodist churches. They are the ones who said, I'm not dealing with this anymore. We're going our own way. It all clicks. The disobedience, it all comes together. The disobedience. We go back to it. Go back to Saul, right? Oh, well, look, I did this thing for, I made this sacrifice in this altar. Do you want me to do I want to see your actions to bring me honor, or do I just want you to do what I say? God's just do what I say. And so much of us, there are churches out there that just think that just because a New Testament exists, that God doesn't want us to just obey. That never changed. Jesus did not change the law. He fulfilled it. He is a fulfillment of it. When we get into Revelation, when we get into some of the latter parts of the New Testament, it becomes very clear that some of these attitudes and theologies about things. No. No. Do not. Do not think that you can just get away with everything now because Jesus got on that cross. That's a look. I'm not the one standing in judgment of other people, but I can tell you I don't think that's a recipe for success for you. And again, I want as many people in that party up in heaven as possible. As possible. And I got my own failings that I need to work on as well. So I said, I don't want to push anybody away. And I want to do that less to people who aren't in the church. But people in the church who claim to know but don't know better, or acting like they don't know better, I'll talk to them about it. I'm going to put that out there. And I don't want Jesus warned about the lukewarm too. About the fence sitters. Won't be that either. All right, guys. All right. So no stream tomorrow. We'll close that again. We'll close things out now. Emmanuel, this is part of just getting older too. Getting smarter, getting your head in a better position and studying the word. But I can clearly say that you and talking to my sister has softened my heart, or to learn to be less judgmental and to live by grace. Yeah. And just build on that. Like I said, forgiveness, grace, stuff like that, that doesn't come at the cost of your own principles. That doesn't come at the cost of compromising God's principles. But understanding that that's part of God's principles. And holding firm to that, just like as much as you hold firm to the other righteous things that we're called to be. But yes, no stream tomorrow. We're probably not going to have an off-topic Friday, but we will stream on Friday night. What I think I might do is just go over Megan Bosham's article, because I think that might be a good discussion point. So, all right, MR, Emmanuel, thank you guys. Nico, Peter Branscombe, thanks for stopping by. Blaine's Escape Corner, I'll see you later on your stream. Eric, roll on, my boy, Angel Legend. Go check his channel out. He just did an interview last week with Gary Wayne, who did the Genesis 6 conspiracy. They were talking about the tribes of Israel. That's cool stuff to go through. You might not, again, trying to think of it gets in the weeds. more than you get on here. But that's one of the things I like about it. Like about him. Angel or Eric digs deep into some of this stuff. Alex Moore. Let's see who else. Fig. Porcupine. Neo, who's asleep now. Porcupine probably is too. Dresden. I think that's it. Look, all you guys, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being part of the chat. Again, if you want to support the stream, just help me make it bigger. Help me make it bigger. Promote it when you can. Word of mouth helps a lot. Like and subscribe. If you see somebody who you think would be interested in what we're doing here, by all means, share the stream with them. Tell them to come on, and more importantly, stay in the chat, guys. I love seeing you guys come in and out. Not just some of my friends that I go to church with, or some of the friends I'm friends with offline, like Eric Rollon. But all of you guys are great. Great to hang out with, and Gary, great to hear from. With that said, you guys have a very great night. See you guys on Friday. God bless.